How hardworking American families raise successful children. The Weight of the American Dream. A story of sacrifice, secrets, and the love that holds it all together. The hook. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, not in an envelope marked urgent or stamped with a government seal. No, this letter came in a plain white envelope, slightly bent at the corner, tucked between a grocery store flyer and a credit card offer. Martha Brennan almost threw it away. She almost did. And if she had, the next 40 years of her life would have unfolded like a different novel entirely, one with a quieter ending perhaps, but certainly not the one she was meant to live. Martha was 43 years old, standing in her cramped kitchen in a modest split level in Akron, Ohio, when she slit that envelope open with a butter knife. Outside, an Ohio autumn was painting the maples gold, and her husband Danny was 3 hours into his second shift at the Goodyear tire plant. Their son Tyler, 17, was supposed to be at football practice. Their daughter Grace, 15, was supposed to be at debate club. But the letter wasn't from the school. It wasn't from the bank. It wasn't from anyone Martha had ever heard of. It was from a law firm in Chicago, and it began with 5 words that would crack open her family's carefully constructed world like a geode. "We have found your daughter. The secret." Martha didn't faint. She didn't scream. She sat down hard in the vinyl chair she'd bought at a garage sale in Canton 7 years ago, and she read the letter 3 times before her hands stopped shaking. 22 years ago, when Martha was 21 and Danny was 23, and they were living in a studio apartment in Cleveland with roaches in the walls and dreams bigger than their bank account, Martha had done something she never spoke of. Not to her mother in Pittsburgh, not to her priest at St. Mary's in Akron, not to Danny, not even on their darkest nights when the factory laid him off and they ate ramen for dinner and prayed the electricity wouldn't get cut. She had given up a baby girl, a closed adoption, no names exchanged, a clean break, the social worker had called it, a fresh start. Martha had held that baby for 11 minutes. She had counted each one. She had memorized the shape of her daughter's nose, the color of her hair, dark like Danny's, not auburn like Martha's. She had whispered a name she had no right to give. Lily. Then she had handed her to a nurse, walked out of University Hospital's Cleveland Medical Center, and gone back to work at the diner on Euclid Avenue the very next morning. Because that's what you did. You worked. You survived. You buried the pain so deep it became part of your foundation, holding up everything else you built on top of it. And they had built so much. Danny worked his way up from line worker to floor supervisor at Goodyear. Martha went from diner waitress to office manager at a real estate firm in Fairlawn. They bought the split level. They had Tyler, then Grace. They put money in a 529 plan. They attended parent-teacher conferences and PTA meetings and Friday night football games at Archbishop Hoban High School. They looked to anyone driving past their house on Manchester Road like the quintessential hard-working American family. But every year on October 17th, Martha took a personal day from work. She told Danny she needed a mental health day. She drove to Cleveland, sat on a bench at Edgewater Park, and watched the Lake Erie waves crash against the rocks. She never told him why. She never told anyone. Until now. The confrontation. Danny came home at 11:47 p.m., smelling of rubber and industrial soap, his Steelers cap pulled low over eyes that were already searching for bed. But Martha was waiting at the kitchen table. The letter was spread before her like evidence at a trial. 2 cups of coffee sat cold and untouched. Danny, she said, I need to tell you something. He sat down. He didn't take off his coat. And when she finished, when she told him about the studio apartment, the social worker, the 11 minutes, the name she whispered, he didn't speak for a long time. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed on Manchester Road, its headlights sweeping across their curtains. Why now? He finally asked. The law firm says she's been searching for 5 years. She hired them when she turned 21. There's a new law in Illinois. Adoptees can access original birth certificates. She found my name. She wants to meet. Danny stood up. He walked to the window. He was a man who fixed things, leaky faucets, broken bicycles, shattered confidence. But this was a crack in the foundation he'd never known existed. Does she know about me? She knows you exist. She doesn't know your name. I never put it on the forms. I thought if I kept you separate from it, I could protect you, protect us. He turned around, and Martha saw something she hadn't seen in years. Not since Tyler was born premature and they spent 3 weeks in the NICU at Akron Children's Hospital, not sure he would make it. She saw fear, but beneath it, she saw the same thing that had made her fall in love with him in that Cleveland diner 25 years ago. A stubborn, unshakable decency. We tell the kids, he said, tomorrow, together, and then we decide as a family. The children. Tyler Brennan was not having a good senior year. Oh, on the surface, everything looked perfect. Captain of the Archbishop Hoban football team, 3.8 GPA, accepted early decision to Ohio State. He had a girlfriend, Megan O'Brien, whose father was a judge and whose smile made him forget his own name. But underneath, Tyler was drowning in the weight of expectations. His father worked 60-hour weeks. His mother worked 50. They never complained. They never missed a game. They had sacrificed. Oh, how they had sacrificed to give him everything he never asked for. And Tyler knew, with the bone-deep certainty of every first-generation success story, that he could not fail. Not ever. Not even a little. He was up at 5 a.m. every morning, lifting weights in the garage before school. He stayed up until midnight studying. He didn't drink at parties. He didn't smoke. He was the perfect son, and he was exhausted in a way that sleep couldn't fix. Grace Brennan, meanwhile, was burning with a different fire. At 15, Grace had already decided that the world was unfair, that capitalism was a rigged game, and that her parents' obsession with success was just another word for spiritual death. She wore Doc Martens and red bell hooks and Angela Davis. She argued with her economics teacher at Hoban. She spent her weekends volunteering at a food bank in Barberton, not because she was virtuous, but because she was angry. Angry at a system that made her parents work themselves to exhaustion, angry at a culture that measured worth by achievement, angry at a brother who seemed to have swallowed the whole mythology without choking. She loved them, though. God, she loved them. She just didn't know how to save them from themselves. When Martha and Danny sat them down the next evening, after a dinner of meatloaf and mashed potatoes that nobody really ate, Tyler felt his stomach drop. He thought they were getting divorced. He thought his father had cancer. He thought 1,000 catastrophes, but he never thought of this. A sister, a half-sister, a stranger with his mother's eyes. Her name is Lily Chen now, Martha said, her voice steady, but her hands knotted together. She was raised in Evanston, Illinois. Her adoptive parents are professors at Northwestern. She's a graduate student in social work at University of Chicago. She wants to meet us. All of us. She's Chinese? Grace asked. her activist brain already spinning. Her adoptive father is Chinese American. Her mother is white. They couldn't have children. They chose open adoption in their community, but mine was closed. Different systems. So she's smart, Tyler said, and immediately hated himself for it. I mean, Northwestern professors. She's your sister, Danny said, and his voice carried the weight of every double shift, every missed birthday, every sacrifice made so his children could have what he didn't. That's all that matters. But it wasn't all that mattered. They all knew it. The meeting, they decided to meet in Chicago. Neutral ground. Martha suggested Millennium Park, near the Bean. Public, beautiful, easy to escape if things went wrong. Danny booked a room at a Holiday Inn in Streeterville. They drove the 5 hours from Akron in silence, each lost in their own calculus of hope and fear. Lily Chen was already there when they arrived. She was sitting on a bench near the Crown Fountain, reading a book, something about urban poverty, Grace would later note with approval. She looked up as they approached, and Martha stopped walking, because there it was, the nose, the dark hair, the shape of her jaw. 22 years collapsed into a single moment, and Martha felt time become liquid, past and present flowing together like the Chicago River on St. Patrick's Day. Lily stood up. She was small, like Martha. She wore a Northwestern sweatshirt and jeans with paint stains. She had a tattoo on her wrist. Coordinates, Grace would later learn, of the Cleveland hospital where she was born. Mrs. Brennan, Lily said, and her voice was steady, but her eyes were wet. Mr. Brennan, thank you for coming. Then she looked at Tyler and Grace, and her composure cracked just a little. I have siblings, she whispered. I always wondered. What followed was not the dramatic reunion of movies. There were no tearful embraces, no instant bonds, no magical healing. There was awkwardness. There was coffee at a Starbucks on Michigan Avenue. There was Lily explaining that she had always known she was adopted, that she loved her parents, she emphasized, the professors in Evanston, that she wasn't looking to replace anyone, only to understand. I work with foster kids now, she told them, in Inglewood. I see these children who have nobody, who bounce from home to home, who age out of the system with no support network. And I think about how different my life could have been, not because my adoptive parents are professors, because they were present, because they had the stability to be there, because someone made a choice that gave me a foundation. She looked at Martha then, really looked at her, and Martha saw not accusation but something far more devastating, understanding. You were 21, Lily said. You were poor. You were alone. And you chose to give me a chance at something you couldn't provide. That's not abandonment, Mrs. Brennan. That's love. That's the hardest kind of love there is. Martha wept then. Not the controlled tears of a strong woman, but the ugly, gasping sobs of someone who had carried a stone for 22 years and was finally allowed to set it down. Danny held her. Tyler looked at his shoes. Grace, who had come prepared to be skeptical, found herself reaching across the table to take Lily's hand. So what happens now? Grace asked. Lily smiled, and in that smile, Martha saw the ghost of the baby she had held for 11 minutes, but also someone entirely new. Someone she had never met, never known, never had the chance to love until now. We build something, Lily said, slowly, carefully, like anything worth having. The foundation. They did build something, slowly, carefully. Lily visited Akron for Thanksgiving that year, bringing her boyfriend David, a Chicago public school teacher who talked sports with Danny and social justice with Grace. She came for Christmas, bringing handmade ornaments from a Evanston craft fair. She texted Tyler during his first semester at Ohio State, sending memes about Midwestern winters and care packages of Garrett popcorn from Chicago. But the real change happened within the family itself. Martha started seeing a therapist in Fairlawn, not because she was broken, she told Danny, but because she was finally ready to be whole. She told him about the bench at Edgewater Park, about the annual pilgrimage, about the annual pilgrimage, about the name she whispered. And Danny, who had spent his entire adult life fixing things he could touch, finally understood that some things you couldn't fix with your hands. You could only hold space for them. You could only listen. He started leaving work on time. Not every day. Goodyear still needed him, but enough. He started cooking dinner on Sundays, making his mother's Italian recipes from Youngstown. He started asking Tyler about his dreams, not his grades, and was surprised to learn that his son didn't actually want to be a doctor or a lawyer. Tyler wanted to teach high school history. He wanted to coach football. He wanted to be present for kids the way his parents had been present for him, even when they were exhausted, even when they were scared, even when they were carrying secrets that would have broken lesser people. Then do it, Danny told him. Be a teacher, be a coach, be there. That's the real success, Ty, not the title, the presence. Grace, watching her father soften, her mother heal, her brother choose authenticity over expectation, began to understand something that her bell hooks hadn't quite taught her. That revolution didn't always look like protest. Sometimes it looked like a family choosing to be honest. Sometimes it looked like love that refused to be transactional. She started a podcast, The Akron Archive, interviewing working-class families in Summit County about their lives, their struggles, their definitions of success. It gained a small but devoted following. She interviewed her parents for episode 12, The Night Shift and the American Dream. She interviewed Lily for episode 23, Adoption, Identity, and the Families We Choose. And when Lily graduated with her MSW and took a job at a community center in Bronzeville, Grace drove to Chicago to help her move. They got deep dish pizza at Lou Malnati's and walked along Lake Michigan and talked about what it meant to be sisters. Not by blood alone, but by choice, by effort, by the daily decision to show up. The closing, 2 years after that first letter, the Brennans gathered at Edgewater Park, the whole strange, beautiful constellation of them, Martha and Danny, Tyler and Megan, now engaged, wedding planned for next spring at Stan Highwit Hall. Grace, home from Oberlin for the summer, her podcast now syndicated on NPR. Lily and David, visiting from Chicago, wedding rings on their fingers from a courthouse ceremony the month before. They stood on the rocks where Martha had spent 22 years mourning and watched the Lake Erie sunset paint the sky in colors no Ohio autumn could match. "Mom?" Tyler said, his arm around his fiancée, his voice deeper now, more certain. "Why here? Why did you always come here?" Martha looked at the water, then at her family, all of them, the ones she raised and the ones she gave away and the ones they had gained along the way. "Because this is where I said goodbye," she said. "And I thought if I kept coming back, if I kept the pain in one place, I could protect the rest of my life from it. But I was wrong. The pain wasn't something to hide. It was something that made room for all of this. She gestured, not dramatically, just a small movement of her hand encompassing the lake, the sky, the people she loved. Hard work isn't just about the hours you put in, she continued. It's about the choices you make when nobody's watching. It's about getting up when you want to stay down. It's about loving people enough to let them go and loving them enough to welcome them back. Danny and I, we didn't have much when we started, but we had that. We had the willingness to work, not just at jobs, but at this, at family, at forgiveness, at hope. Danny took her hand. Lily leaned her head on David's shoulder. Grace wiped her eyes and muttered something about Midwestern sentimentality, but she was smiling. America tells us success is a destination, Danny said, his Steelers cap in his back pocket, his hair more gray than black now. A degree, a salary, a house on the right street. But I've learned, maybe too late, but I've learned that success is a practice. It's showing up. It's telling the truth. It's making sure the people you love know they're loved, not because of what they achieve, but because of who they are. He looked at Tyler, the teacher, at Grace, the storyteller, at Lily, the healer. You three, he said, his voice thick. You're our success, not because you're accomplished, because you're kind, because you're brave, because you keep going. The sun dipped below the horizon. The Cleveland skyline began to light up across the lake. And the Brennan family, whole, complicated, imperfect, and utterly real, stood together on the rocks, watching the dark come in, unafraid. Because they had learned what every hardworking American family eventually learns, that the dream isn't something you achieve, it's something you build, one honest day at a time, with the people you choose to love. Good luck, dear viewers, and if this story spoke to you, if you believe in the power of hard work, honest love, and second chances, stay with us on this channel. Subscribe. Share your own stories in the comments, because every family has a letter they almost threw away. Every family has a secret that could break them or make them whole. And every family, if they're brave enough, can build something beautiful from the broken pieces. This is your English Story channel. We'll see you next time.